last year in 2020. So like this slide says, we're not isolated, we're part of a larger community, and we kind of just realized, a lot of us, that there are a lot of challenges and then a lot of things that we want and need to change from our communities. And it's important to collaborate to solve these issues and to advocate for any cause that you feel strong for or that affects you or your families. So I guess this past year was a reminder that we need to get involved and we need to support each other to create positive change. Okay. Okay, and then we have Sarah with the mission of South Carolina Women.
Yeah, and I touched on this a little bit just a moment ago with our mission, but Will, obviously in the last year to 18 months, a huge movement for social justice has swept the United States, and we feel that our mission is more important than ever. And so obviously we want to get talented women with diverse and inclusive perspectives to step up and lead and govern. And our focus this year and beyond is building racial and gender representation and increasing the collective influence of women in leadership from the ground up. And so that's helping everyone be more confident to step into leadership roles, building networks, and helping you obtain the skills to lead with workshops like today.
Okay, thanks. So we're going to start with our first topic. That is volunteer management, and with this like motivational phrase. And it says, volunteers are the only human beings on the face of the earth who reflect this nation's compassion, unselfish caring, patience, and plain loving one another. So who is a volunteer? This is important to know if you are starting a program or if you're managing you want to create the program for your organization. It's important because it includes some legal and like issues regarding how to manage people that work at your organization. So we have people who are staff members, who are paid members, who work a specific time and are paid and compensated for their time and overtime. Then we have interns. So interns, most of the time, are students or people interested in learning some skills or developing a set of skills or talent or getting some knowledge from their work with the organization. So what they get, it's mostly the experience and the skills. Interns can be paid or can be unpaid, right? So then we have volunteers. So volunteers, and here it says, it's an individual who performs hours of service for a public agency. It can be charitable, humanitarian reasons without promise or expectation of compensations for services. So volunteers are donating their time, their skills to the organization just because they believe in their mission, just because they want to help their community. They may want to get or acquire some set of experience or skills, but that's not the main reason they are volunteering for. So there's a big difference between an intern and a volunteer. In All In Together, we manage some interns, and most of the time the schools send their interns, and there's like an internal commitment for us to help them develop specific skills. So whatever we want interns to do needs to be related to their career, to what they were studying, so they need to come out with some skills or things, and we can even write a recommendation letter. Volunteers not. So we can ask a volunteer to help us to set up a table, to bring water for the community members, to do all this sort of other things that may not be that appropriate for an intern, because we want to keep on the educational part of the role. And for volunteers, there's not an expectation to be paid. This is not a paid role. Sometimes we can reimburse volunteers' expenses if they are either traveling or doing some things, but it's really important not to pay volunteers, because then we're treating them as a staff. And we as organization have the obligation to treat them as a staff and give them all the benefits that a staff member would have. So here, volunteers donate their services. They are not employees, and there is no expectations of getting any compensation. Usually they are part-time. It's really difficult to find a full-time volunteer, and it's mostly for humanitarian or public service reasons. So that's kind of the difference. And it's important because when you're creating your roles or your job description or your volunteer program, you need to have this in mind. There are some things that you can ask volunteers to do and some things you shouldn't, or you shouldn't like give them compensation or treat them as employees, because we want to maintain very separate these roles. Why are they important? I've worked with volunteers, and I can say that it's amazing to have all these people from different places and with different skills who are passionate about whatever you're doing, your mission. So it says citizen engagement. You have a project or you have a community organization, you want people to know about your community organization. You want people to be active and engage in whatever you're doing. They can serve as ambassadors for different things like fundraising, advocacy, and outreach. So a lot of times through volunteers, we develop activities such as community engagement and outreach. They would help us and, I don't know, share flyers, just talk to their friends about the work they are doing with the organization. They can share the organization's mission. They can help us with fundraising even. A lot of volunteers start their fundraising efforts with family and friends for a specific organization. Like right now we have in Facebook that you can, the day when it's your birthday, you ask your friends and family to donate for a specific nonprofit. So that's great. We want people to know about our work, and we want people to engage and to engage others. They inject energy and enthusiasm because most of the time volunteers are either part of the community we're working in. So it's also a way of knowing what the needs and the challenges of the community are, or people who are interested in supporting that specific community. Volunteers can range from different like socioeconomic status, even if we are in the same neighborhood. I used to work in a neighborhood in Brooklyn, in Park Slope, in between Park Slope and Sunset Park, and we were serving an immigrant Spanish-speaking community. So we had those kind of volunteers. But we also had all the volunteers from Park Slope who were like higher income white community who wanted to help their neighbors. So it was interesting to have those like mix of volunteers from different backgrounds, but still it was the same neighborhood and the same community. And it was also a way of engaging or kind of making them engage with one another and know their neighbors. And they complement jobs of full-time staff and bring skills. So there are projects or small nonprofits, we don't have enough staff. So we always need help. We always need someone who helps us with specific things, and we cannot hire more staff. So we have volunteers who most of the time help us with these things. It can be from someone like a high school student who's helping us in the front desk, right? Greeting people and giving information. But we can also find a lawyer, for instance, that wants to work a little bit pro bono and help us with our legal things, or an accountant who would help us with our bookkeeping. So these are like an extra set of skills and talents that we are not able to pay, but that are offered or donated to us by volunteers. Why people volunteer? Have you volunteered before, and what led you to volunteer? So has someone here volunteered before? Are you currently volunteering? Are you interested in volunteering? If so, why you think it's important? Why are you doing that?
I volunteer because I think it's important to always try to make a change for the better in the world. I think that's important to my psyche to do that.
Yeah, so does it make you feel good volunteering? Does it give you a sense of meaning? And what type of volunteer work are you doing?
I am the director for Brady United Against Gun Violence in South Carolina.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, perfect. So thank you for
Bills today.
thank you for like donating your time. And so you feel strong about this mission, right? About the
Yeah.
mission of the organization. And
Yeah.
that's what you say, like, I have some time and I'm going to volunteer and help.
That's
And
me.
how has this experience been for you?
It's been very healthy. If I don't do something to try and make things better for a couple of days in a row, I get down in the dumps. So to me, it's important for myself to go out and try and do something to make it better.
Perfect. Thank you. No, this is great. Thank you, Mariel. Someone else wants to share their experience?
I have volunteered before for an organization called the Greenville Special Olympics. And basically what we would do is they would partner you with a kid and you would help take them to their events and just, make sure that they have an enjoyable day.
Wow, that sounds really nice. And so what's the thing that led you to volunteer in this position or in this role or through this organization?
I heard about it through my church and I knew some friends that were doing it, and I've always just been thankful for what I have. And, when you have things, it's important to give back, I feel like.
Perfect. No, thank you. So I guess this sense of giving back because we have so much, supporting the community, and also something that makes us feel good. And I want to say here, it's not in the deck, but in my experience, when we volunteer, we need to find something that makes us feel good, that we agree with that, but also capacity-wise, that we are capable of doing that. A lot of people, it's frustrated and it's like, I would like to volunteer like 20 hours a week, but I can't because I have kids. Okay, then just find something that fits you. 1 hour, 2 hours a week, or once a month or something. And it should feel good. People should feel good when they are volunteering because they are donating their time and their skills. And what we're looking for is to find something that it's meaningful for us, that we're happy doing, right? So that's important when finding where to volunteer and how to volunteer.
See one other hand raised.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's also important that when we offer to volunteer our time, that we provide the organization with what they need.
I
Instead of
agree.
us coming there with an agenda of what we want to give, we need to be able to provide them with what they need.
I agree. So I guess in this part, it's both. First, finding an organization that kind of deals or works with the things that we are interested in, right? If we're interested in helping elderly people, then we'll go to an organization helping children or the environment. But also, when we get there, the organization should have a set of things that they are, and we're going to see that a little bit later, a volunteer program. So they usually have different positions, and one, it's like, we need a volunteer who's going to help us 2 hours a week and going to do some phone calls, right? Or maybe they need, no, we want someone that's going to be here at least 10 hours and it's going to be teaching, right? So then we can choose what fits us and what's helpful for them. That would be like the perfect match. Something that we're capable of doing, that we love doing, and also that they need, and it's important and relevant for them. Yes, thank you for that comment.
And I see another raised hand.
Yes,
I'm not sure. I see Zonta Club of Birmingham. I'm not sure what your name is.
Sorry about that. My name is Susan Shepard, actually. Thank you very much. And I am past president of Zonta Club in Birmingham. And I'm area director for District 11 in Birmingham. I would like to say I've been volunteering since high school. And basically it's for the same reasons that the previous respondents have said, is I felt like I needed to give back to the community. And I also want to interject here that this is about the third webinar I've been on with your group, and you have a fantastic organization there. If you decide you can bring it to Alabama, let me know.
Perfect. No, thank you so much for that.
Maybe we need to get you to move to South Carolina.
That's a thought.
Well, I'd like to chime in. So I have volunteered at my children's school. And I think one of the reasons that I volunteered was because I had a certain skill set. I helped them with a fundraising event, and they didn't really have anyone on their PTO board who was familiar with like running a fundraising event. And so sometimes, it, like Deborah was saying, you see what is needed with something that you're connected to and you believe in, and you know that you have a skill set that can help them. And to piggyback, I think on what Guadalupe said is, I'm sure we've all had the volunteer experiences where you do have a certain, like you have a certain amount of time or something that you agreed to do. And then there's this creep, or you take something on and then there's like no one else to help you. And so I think one of the things that really is important is to have the expectations outlined. It's easy to burn people out or to lose people if you like have you expect too much of them or you put too much on their plate as a volunteer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. It's great hearing from people who are volunteering about their experiences. Okay, so why people volunteer, and it's mostly what we all shared, right? Volunteers come from all walks of life. It could be retired people, students, professionals, and the motivation is different, but most of the time people want to give back to their community. They want to learn new things. They want to have this sense of personal growth or achievement. They want to make a difference. Also, volunteers want to make friends. They want to feel part of an organization. So if you're new, like if you moved into a new place, you're new in the community, volunteering, it's a great way of knowing people who may like the same things or be passionate about the same things that you are. So when we're creating a volunteer program, we're thinking about that, or we're interviewing volunteers, it's very important to ask, why are you volunteering? What are your expectations from volunteering, or what would be your goals, right? Okay, so then we're going to start as an organization, a program for managing volunteers. So effective program management means that we are integrating the volunteers in the right way so we can achieve the mission of our organization. For this, we need to understand the goals or skills of the volunteers and how to align them with the mission. We need to share the sense of purpose between volunteers and staff. It's very important to integrate our volunteers with the staff and to make them feel like they are part of the organization. I've seen organizations where we have the staff and they treat volunteers as like, oh, just give that to the volunteer, or they don't even know their names. That's not what we should do. We should be all integrated because we're sharing a passion and a mission. So we at least must know the name of the volunteer, what are they here for. Volunteers should know the staff members, so if they have any questions, they know who to ask, how to ask. Volunteers must align with the values, the purpose, and the organizational procedures. And there should be clear guidelines for volunteers and staff to interact. So our organization has specific values that volunteers should agree to. For instance, in All In Together, we're nonpartisan, and that's part of who we are and our values. So we may have someone that's civically engaged and passionate, but that person is partisan, and that person wants to share or support a specific political group. So we need to be really clear. While you are volunteering, you can't do that. You need to be nonpartisan. And if that's something you don't agree with, I'm sorry, but maybe you can find a different organization. This is important. It's better to find the right volunteers, someone that share our values and fits with the organization, than to get all volunteers and then we're going to have problems. So it's better to kind of pick or select not only for us as an organization, but also for volunteers, because they're not going to have the experience that they are looking for. So there should be clear guidelines. Guidelines should be explained to volunteers so we all agree on what's happening, how are we going to work, and we're like in the same page. Yeah, so a question here. I see a hand with Susan. Oh, you're muted. Okay. No problem. So some misconceptions about managing volunteers. There is this belief that it's either really easy to manage volunteers or very hard. It's not easy or hard. It depends on how we have a system to effectively manage them. Volunteers are free. That's a misconception because having volunteers involve some costs, or at least it involves time or engagement from the staff. So someone has to be dedicated to them. So that's a cost too. Misconception is that volunteers don't need supervision or they can just do the things by themselves. That's not true. Volunteers need supervision, they need support, they need training so they can do whatever they're doing in the right way. Misconception is that volunteers just love volunteering. No, they will stay here with us and it doesn't matter if they don't and that's not true. We need to keep volunteers engaged and supported. They need to feel like they are contributing to the mission or the organization and that their work is being valued, right? It's not like they are just going to be committed forever. And that volunteers are an expensive or a luxury, that's a misconception. If well managed, volunteers can reduce expenses and they can help us by performing tasks that we don't have the capacity to do as a small organization. Some challenges for managing volunteers. Time. So either there's one person who's in charge of volunteer program, or we need to find someone who is able to manage volunteers. And also time from the volunteers. We have either school, work, kids. So maybe volunteers have a very limited time to give to organizations. Resources. A lot of organizations don't have all the resources to manage volunteers, to keep them engaged, even to look for volunteers. The staff and leadership engagement. Again, we need to treat volunteers as part of our team. They need to feel part of the organization, like they are representing the organization and working for the mission, right? Volunteer engagement on long term, that's difficult because as an organization, most people will say, yeah, I want to volunteer, and they start volunteering for 1 month, 2 months, and then they have things, life happens, whatever, and they are not able to engage in a long-term basis, right? Finding the right fit. As I mentioned, we should find the right fit between what we need as an organization and how much we're capable to manage volunteers, and what are the expectations and talents and skills of the volunteer. We want something that we want volunteers doing things that they feel happy doing, that they are able and capable to do, and that are also impactful and meaningful for our organization. Management styles. There are different management styles for each organization. Some organizations may be really strict with volunteers. Some others may be, more easygoing with volunteers. So there's different management styles. Understanding the importance of volunteers, it's always a little bit of a challenge, especially with board members or financial officers, because when there are costs or time involved, they may think that it's not worth it. So we need to make the case for them that we need volunteers, not only because they are helping us doing things that we can't do by ourselves, but also because they are part of the community and they're also our ambassadors or the voice of our organization, right? And maybe difficult circumstances. Last year was a difficult time to ask for volunteers because everyone was so burnt out and overwhelmed. So maybe people have other priorities, kids' work. So that may be a challenge when getting volunteers. So this would be like an idea of what we want from volunteers, like an ideal volunteer program. We have the volunteers right fit, right? They are available, they have the skills, they have the interest, they are committed. We as an organization have the support. We can provide them with the resources, with the supervision, with the help. And then the community and the staff, they both feel, the volunteers and the staff, that they are belonging, they are part of the organization, we're sharing a mission, we're in this together. And then we also have this sense of meaning. We're doing something, or work matters, we're doing something to change our community or to help our community, right? And this would be the right formula for getting long-term volunteer engagement. And when we have long-term volunteers, we're supporting our organization and helping to fulfill our mission. And that's perfect. In my experience, having long-term volunteers, it's amazing because you train them and they become part of the organization. They know how things work. Sometimes they start as part-time, they move to more hours, and they even are like, they provide feedback when they see things. They are people who bring on creativity and innovation and say, why I have cases where someone said, I want to do a small fundraiser at my home, right? I don't need anything from the organization. I just want to be able to bring the funds. Or why don't we start this new program? Or even the videos that we do to promote the organization, most of them are by volunteers sharing their experiences. So it's a great way of strengthening our organization by using volunteers. Okay, so as I mentioned, having volunteers, it's not only like recruiting and then we have 30 volunteers and they just need to do something. No, we need to have a plan, because as an organization, we want them to feel like their work is meaningful and we are grateful for their donation of time and skills, right? So the first question as an organization is, what is my goal, or what do I want to accomplish by having volunteers? Is there a specific task that I need volunteers for, right? So let's say I'm doing a gala and I need volunteers. Okay, but what I need volunteers for? Do I need them to promote my gala and I'm gonna ask them to share flyers and social media? Do I need them during the event and I'm gonna ask them to help us setting up? Do I need, let's say, even I wanna have someone singing during my gala. Am I asking for a band or a group to come and sing as a volunteer? So I'm gonna target that group or that type of volunteers. Is this volunteer program for one event, like a gala? Or do I need volunteers for long term because I have workshops all year, or I don't know, adult education classes, and I need someone who comes and help us teach through all the year? So first define what is the goal of having a volunteer and what are the expectations for the volunteers. It's important to have an overall goal, and it's easier if it's smart. Specific, like what it is. It's an event, it's a program. Measurable, how many volunteers, what's the goal of this program, right? And how are volunteers going to help to get to this goal? Attainable, right? It's something that we can attain as an organization, relevant for the organization, and time bound. And then when we have that goal, we need to do smaller or short-term objectives on how to get to that goal, like small tasks. If we're gonna have a gala and one of the small tasks is to share the information of the gala and get people into the gala, and I need to share flyers, social media, well, that's a short-term objective that's gonna help me to get to my goal, right? Okay, so recruiting volunteers. Now that we have a strategic plan, or we're creating our strategic plan, thinking about what is the purpose of having volunteers. Is this for a project? Is this for a long-term program? How are they going to contribute or help us to achieve that? We need to start with the recruiting part. So where can I find volunteers? Everywhere, I could say. The general public. There's people who are, so for instance, source of volunteers. General public. Where are some possible channels where I can get people from the general public? Social media, advertising, in my website, right? Or homemakers, maybe putting a sign on a community board and an online forum. People from corporations. We can reach to the corporation's CSR personnel. So from all these sources of volunteers, there are different ways of finding them or recruiting them. So just think for your volunteer program, what do you want to tackle and how you want to do it? So for instance, if we have a program for high school kids, right? And we need high school volunteers. Well, maybe we go to the school and put in the board, or we share with the teachers this opportunity. We advertise on social media. So we try to get to the kids, right? Which it's different if we want another type of volunteers with a different type of skills. So we're gonna share this so you can see all of the examples. So from people who have volunteered, how did they know about the volunteer opportunity? You read it on social media, someone told you, you saw like a flyer somewhere.
For our organization, which is the Richland County Democratic Party, we have a volunteer coordinator who takes responsibility for keeping a list of volunteers that have served us, and we can put a call out to them asking them if they are available for specific tasks and let them know what the tasks are and how long we'll need them. And we also put this on social media. And we have Democratic groups that we send out emails to them asking them to ask their members if they are interested in the volunteer opportunity.
Okay, perfect. So it's a social media and word of mouth, like volunteers and partners. You ask partners to see if they have any volunteers, right? And that's how you're reaching that the community of volunteers, right?
And creating relationships.
And creating relationships. Perfect. So through partners and new relationships, you find new volunteers.
Yes.
And I guess they share with their channels, and that's how you
Yes.
get new volunteers.
Mhm.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I think we can move. Recruiting. Okay, now that we found a volunteer and we have someone and that person is interested in our organization, this is a very important part because we're engaging with them. And this is where we are motivating them to continue with our follow-up so they can become volunteers. So share your organization mission and services, who we are. Like we're all in together. We do this type of work for civic engagement, and we do workshops, we do voter engagement, we do this. So a person knows what are you talking about, right? Explain the program and the program goals. We have this program, a specific program, Get Out the Vote, that we need volunteers for, right? The goals is that we want to help women to vote in the next election, especially underserved women. How can they make a contribution to their community through the program? So by being a volunteer, you can help us engage more women. We need someone who help us call people, right? Or share flyers with information in your neighborhood. And that will help women to get the information that they need so they can go and vote. Address the concerns of the potential volunteers, if they need or not experience. In this case, I would say there's no prior experience needed for this. Like if you like walking in your neighborhood and you have a pack of flyers and you want to give them, that's enough, right? Maybe some roles need some experience, like we're looking for someone with a background in social work, so they help us with our women's circle, right? It's women group or something, because we want to provide them with emotional support, right? So just be specific. Do I need experience or not? Is it something that I can do or not? That's what the volunteer is thinking, right? Put down the basic requirements you need, including time, commitment, or skills. You can say, we just need 2 hours every week from your time, or we just need 5 hours a month from your time, and right? and share the benefits that they will get. So this will help your community. You will acquire new skills. You may make new friends. You'll have access to all of our workshops and things that we're doing, right? And provide a contact number or where they can get more information. I recommend to have like a flyer or something, a postcard, a flyer, something you can give them so they have the information. And if they are interested, they can just Google it and get all the information they need. And also to get their information so you can follow up with them later. So it's important to have volunteer job descriptions and materials so we can explain and share, and they have all the information available. And managing. Now that we have volunteers as part of our volunteer program, it's important to learn about your volunteers. What is their background? What are their interests? What are their motivations? Really important, learn their names. No one of us likes to be, oh, the new volunteer, the new girl. No, we don't like that. Even when we're volunteering, we want to feel appreciated and that we're part of a team. So just learn their names. And when you're like enrolling them or writing down their information, just try to remember and introduce them to your team. Like, this is Guadalupe, she's a new volunteer, she's going to be part of the team, and introduce that person to everyone. Keep a volunteer database. As Deborah mentioned, it's important to have all the contact information, what are their skills or background, what's their availability, and some demographic information may be important if we have a program and we want grants or funding. But this way, it's not only that we're keeping a database for us, but as Deborah's organization, we can also contact them when we have a specific event, right? So we need people who know how to, I don't know, provide legal services, or lawyers. We need lawyers for this. So we go to our database and we look, okay, who's a lawyer? And then we just send an email and say, hey, we have this program. Would you be available 3 hours during Sunday to help us? And if not, do you know someone who may be? So this is important, keep a database. Track volunteers' activities and impact. If volunteers are helping you to develop a specific program, the impact of their actions, it's relevant to your program. If you have funders, if you have board members, and you want to show not only the importance or relevance of volunteers, but also of the programs they are supporting, you need to track what they are doing and what are the results of what they are doing. You can use volunteers to train, manage, and provide feedback to other volunteers. So sometimes we have a volunteer captain or volunteer leader. So that way it's easier. This works when our organization doesn't have capacity for having a staff member who's in charge of managing volunteers. We can give volunteers these roles. And also most of the times it's our volunteers who have like long-term volunteers in the organization, will have a little bit of experience working with us. That's a good way of managing them. This one is also important. Support volunteers and help them remain fully committed to your organization. It's important to have check-ins with volunteers. How are you doing? Is this this thing that you're doing, can you give me some feedback? Do you need any support, right? Give them clear instructions. We assume that we are working there and we do things every day, and they may not know how to do things. I have a situation where we were having an event and this high school girl was helping us setting the tables and everything. And I asked her, can you set up the tables, please, for me? Just put on tablecloths and some napkins and things. Yeah, and there was like 10 minutes, she was not back. 15 minutes, she was not back. 30 minutes. I was like getting a little bit upset. What's this taking so long? The poor girl was looking everywhere for the tablecloths. Of course, she's not working there. She doesn't know that the storage room is somewhere and that you need a key. And that was my fault. I should have told her, here are the things here, right? So just checking with them, give them clear instructions and all the materials they need. And say thank you. Always say thank you, formal or informal. Formal, maybe I'm giving you, I don't know, we used to do volunteer bags. So every year we would give them like a bag with small things, you know, like some like snacks and like notebooks and things and t-shirts. That's a formal way of saying thank you. We will have a volunteer appreciation day. Or informal, just saying thank you. Thank you. Thank you for helping me setting up the tables. It's really important because I'm busy doing this and people are coming. So thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for helping the organization. That's very important. And I'm almost finished here. Best practices. Say thank you. Be genuine when you're thanking them and recognizing them. We can actually feel when someone is being honest when sharing something and when they are not. So just be honest, right? When you're recognizing volunteers, like in a project, in a program, or just in a meeting, be specific and share particular actions that they took. For instance, it is thank you for helping me setting up the tables. The way you set up the tables and the napkins and everything was great because then we had a lot of space and I would never thought about moving the tables this way. So thanks for that. That's as easy as that. Or thank you for helping us with this grant, right? Someone who's doing like another type of job. Thank you for helping us writing this grant. Like we got the funds and it's amazing. And thank you for giving us your time and donating your support and your time. We can develop a recognition calendar to know that we are recognizing volunteers for their service. We can brainstorm with our staff and leadership to find ways that we can recognize volunteers or improve the program. We can serve as reference for volunteers who are applying for work or school. So if we have kids in high school, we can give them a recommendation letter and say, this person volunteered for us teaching SOL classes, and she's great because she's very responsible, this. That actually helps. And we also write recommendation letters to long-term volunteers, to schools or employers. So I guess that's it. So any questions, comments, or feedback about the volunteer part? I guess the main idea of this is it's important if you're an organization to start this process of developing a strategy and a volunteer program. It's important to know what would be the goals of your organizations and how to use the work of volunteers. It's important to have a right fit between what we're expecting, or like what we need as an organization, and the interests and capacity and values of volunteers, because we want long-term volunteer engagement. And it's very important to be grateful with volunteers and create a program and say thank you. And by having all these things like developing materials that help them, having a point person who's like managing them and supporting them, that's going to help us as an organization to manage them well. I've seen cases where organizations are like, oh, we're having this event and we need as many volunteers as possible. And we have 50 people and we only have 10 things to do. And then there's these people there waiting. And I felt like very bad about it. Like they really want to help. They are like, give me anything to do. I'm happy to help. And they're like, there's nothing else to do. Like, you just like, wait, right? We can have the opposite case where we need a lot of volunteers, but we are not doing outreach. We're not recruiting. We're not engaging. So we don't have anyone there. And we actually need a lot of people there. So it should be the right fit between what we're expecting, what they can do, what's right for the program, and that we have shared goals and values and expectations. So I guess that's it from my part, and I'm gonna give it to Kira. So she's
First, sorry, I see a hand raised.
Oh, yeah.
Madison.
Okay, sure.
I was going to ask, a lot of this just to me seems to really get down to being very intentional and strategic about what you do with volunteers. What are some recommendations you would have for software or just ways to keep yourself organized when dealing with volunteers and being intentional?
So I think it's different for each organization and their technology and capacity. I think just being organized, and also I'm talking about small organizations, right? I think like big organizations dealing with millions or thousands, I'm not sure what they use, but just having a person who has all the information and like a specific either spreadsheet, data list. There are all these CRM, I don't know if you can help me, Kira, programs for managing, what's this called? I can share that information with you later of some platforms for that would be a good support for managing volunteers. But I can say that added to the platform, it's also important to actually get the information, because it doesn't make sense if we have a great platform and social thing, but no one is actually like writing down the names, or we have the different spreadsheets or things all over the place. And that's like not a good practice. We can share later, I think, if Sarah allows us to share some platforms for managing volunteers. And then you can find which one would be the right one for your organization regarding how many volunteers are you managing, and the capacities, because we have some small organizations that they don't have any, like they don't have tablets, they just have one computer, you know. Maybe an Excel file, it's okay if you're managing 10, 20 volunteers, right? You're small. If you're managing 100, it may not be the best thing. But we can share those platforms, and also just reminding you that it's important not just to have the platform, but to know how to use it and to use it and to be consistent. Okay, thank you. So I guess we're good to continue.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kiera Powell. As Guadalupe said, I am the External Affairs Coordinator for All In Together. And kind of to her point when she was talking about strategy with volunteers, strategy when you look at a communications platform or entity, that is super important in how you are telling your story, how you're reaching the audiences that you want to engage with, and the kind of brand overall you want to present yourself as. So if we can go to that first slide. Finding your voice. I think this is super important when you are starting out to try and establish who you want to be in your space, who you want to present yourself as to the types of people who you hope to engage with. How are you going to frame that message? What are the words that you want to use to describe yourself? In the same way, as you introduce yourself to a friend or someone new that you're meeting for the first time, what would you want to say about yourself? You need to think about that from an organizational standpoint, because social media, for better for worse, is often our calling card. It is the first impression that somebody will get of you, your organization, and what is the type of content that you want to be putting out there for them to see, from a branding perspective. What's your overall goal? What do you hope people take away from your organization? What is the action items that you hope that they are walking away to do? What do you need from them? And again, who are the people that you're trying to target? And you have to be consistent. That is key among all things. When we're looking especially at social media, if you are silent for weeks at a time and then randomly are putting information out there and hoping to get traction from it, it just doesn't work. And we have to think about that when we're looking at trying to get followers. It's not really, you have to think beyond that, because there is a machine that you're putting this information into that you're fighting against, this algorithm. And so even if content you don't see getting traction, it helps to just keep putting it out there, because the more eyeballs that are seeing this one post help it to be pushed to somebody else, and so on and so forth. And so you just have to think about it a little differently in terms of, well, this isn't working. It is working. It just takes a little bit of time. And I'll add the example that I will use in terms of looking at branding and marketing from All In Together. We're in our 7th year, and we're at a crossroads in terms of strategy and how we're trying to move forward. The idea of civics, I think, carries a different idea or thought for a lot of different people. For somebody, it might mean advocating to get a pothole filled in your neighborhood. How do I do that? That's the information that I want. For somebody else, it's pushing for a piece of legislation on a federal level to be passed or to be shot down. And how do I do that? Who do I turn to advocate for these things? And so we have been in a lot of brainstorming sessions, and that's something that I would recommend for anyone when you're looking at starting a new campaign, starting a new organization, starting a new mission. What do we want to say? And what are the key things that we want people to hear? What are the most important parts of what we're doing? How do we streamline the projects that we have going on with the content that we're putting out there in terms of getting the people that we want to be involved to see our content? Sharing your message with your audience. Again, as I was saying, consistency is so important. You don't want to go from talking about flavors of ice cream to talking about voter engagement. You have to make sure that the content that you're putting out there makes sense in terms of who you are as an organization. It is awesome to get creative and to have fun and to engage people in a conversation, because that's what social media is about. But it definitely needs to be done in terms of, does it make sense with who we are? Does it make sense in terms of the mission that we're trying to drive, and the campaign that we have going on? How do you want to achieve those goals? It's super helpful to kind of mark out a social media calendar where you go through the dates and list things that might be important to your organization, and so that you already have that content pre-done, and you can schedule that out through TweetDeck. Facebook also has the ability to pre-schedule things. Instagram does now too. So you can work weeks in advance, so you're not scrambling day of to try and put that content together. And that, from a branding perspective, incredible. It just takes so much of the burden off of one individual to be responsible for monitoring that all day, because that would consume your life, I feel like, at times, if you were just trying to come up with it the day of. And again, defining who your ideal audience is. If you want to reach Gen Z, you're not going to be on Facebook trying to reach that audience. They are on TikTok. You're going to come up with creative dances to help spread that message, or just fun, different ways. And so you just have to know who you're looking at and what you want to achieve with that message. And beyond understanding your audience, understanding the platform that you're using. Twitter is much different than Instagram, than Facebook, and just kind of looking at the analytics. Each of these platforms provides tools that help you better see what time people are engaging with your pages, the type of content that's getting the most interaction, and what's doing well, and making sure that you guys are checking in on that information and utilizing it to best further your organization. And you just want to, utilize all the tools available, whether it's TV ads, if you guys are TV, radio, internet, one-on-one conversation, word of mouth. And if you have money to put into ads, I think, especially when you have a specific campaign beyond like the day-to-day content, that can be super helpful in growing that audience and furthering those eyeballs. Social media campaigns are very unique in that they they always have a specific mission, and just making sure that you're very clear in what the end goal is for that. In March, I think it was now, we had our Black Women Lead event where we had, I feel like 2020 has just bled into 2021, and days, months, nothing is standing out. It just is all a blur. So it might not have been March, but I think it is. But we had our Black Women Lead event, and we had a ton of guest speakers, all speaking about different, we had journalists, we had politicians, we had artists, all talking about different parts of socialism, social engagement and activism, political engagement. And so making sure that we were trying to target our audience in a way that they understood what the event was going to be about, what we hoped for them to take away afterwards, how to rally that and kind of move forward. Another important thing to think about when you're looking at putting together a campaign, the beginning, the middle, and an end. How do you want to promote it before it happens? How do you want to promote it when it's happening? And what do you hope people to do with it after it's done? And how do you want to keep furthering, repurposing some of that content to further engage and garner traction based off of what you've already done the work. So you have that content freely available. So why not continue to utilize it? And again, consistency, feed the algorithm. It's ever changing. So it's just important. If you want to post every day at 9, 11, 2:30, 4, whatever the time frame is, just make sure that that is what the targets are being hit. It helps you in the long run. And just engaging with your audience. You're not talking into a void, although it can feel like that at times. You have to look at it as a conversation. How do I engage with somebody in a way that's going to spark an interesting thought or a debate in a healthy way? How do I challenge someone or something in a way that's positive and beneficial to our organization and to the greater community? And I think, I mean, those are the ends of my slides. If you guys have any questions.
Yeah.
Deborah?
Yeah. Can you give us a little more information on Feed the Algorithm?
Yeah, sure. So I don't have a full grasp of understanding, but if you want to, like for Twitter, there's a thing called Twitter Flight School, and it has a bunch of different programs on how to kind of work the system. But again, the algorithm is just, it's going to match your content with somebody who is most likely to engage or be interested in what you're putting out there. But if you're not putting something out there once every 2 weeks, they're going to think this is not a organization or a platform that's going to have much value to our audience. And we only want to put content in front of our audience we know is going to do well. It's a business for them just as much as it is for you guys. And they want to get that traction as well. So while every post may not hit it out of the park, it's so random at times. When Justice Ginsburg passed away, we posted that night, and that anytime we post about her, people go insane. And I don't know what it is. She's a wonderful human, and I get that, but it is numbers and engagement in a way that we don't really see outside of that. So it's just constantly kind of playing with it, how you're marketing what it is you want to say, and switching it up. So you don't want to constantly post articles back to back to back. That you need to diversify the content that you're putting out, whether that's a picture or a GIF or a graph to depict the information that you're trying to relay to somebody. You just want to make sure that it's a wide variety of content, and it's not just the same repeated information, because that the algorithm will also kind of reject to the side. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, and I'll also jump in to say that in addition to putting your content out there, and the algorithm is like, I mean, it's a secret, like it's obviously proprietary, and there are things in there that like they're never going to tell us why or how they do it. But they also look at other accounts that you engage with. So if you're liking and sharing other accounts that you're following, because they want it to be a two-way street. So if you're only posting but not engaging with other accounts, then you're not going to see as much reach on your posts. It's not going to get served to as many people as well, because they don't want it to just be you putting things out there and expecting everyone to come to you. They want that interaction there. To make that a little bit more deep and richer connections.
Absolutely. And Madison also talked about hashtags. Those are very important too, in terms of obviously the platform that you're using, but making sure that you are trying to gear your content towards the audience that would be looking at those specific hashtags and how does it fit. And it does help to kind of research the hashtag before you put it out there, just to see where this will flow into what stream, and to make sure that it is the audience you want to engage and grab. And I see another question. Do you have any advice for facilitating social media with experienced members? Can you just elaborate with the experienced members?
Yes, the generations past the millennials.
Okay.
Curious.
And I think it goes again to targeting the platforms that they're on. I know that the experienced members, Facebook, Instagram is a toss up. Twitter, you do have a more wide breadth of engagement and audience members. So just going to the platforms that they're on. So if that's your target demographic, well, let's go to where they are, and then start posting content there.
And
Well,
you can, sorry.
The problem is that they're not there. Facebook, and so there's not too much Twitter, and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and you may want to also, if you're communicating that through like email or other methods, making sure that you remind them or provide them with links to your social media accounts, so, hey, if you want to get regular updates outside of this email, like us on Facebook, or those sorts of things, to try to kind of draw them in as well from other methods.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're talking here about social media campaigns, but just for you to remember that this is not the only channel. If you want to reach people, there are other traditional channels that you can use. You can like share a flyer. If there's like a church, maybe you can go and post something there. You can do a one-on-one conversation. So just trying to understand where they are and how to get to them. And social media, it's just one way. But maybe there's other people, I don't know, my grandma, I'm not sure if she has a Facebook account. But if you post something at the church, she will see that, right? So just understanding who's your audience and how can you get to them. Social media may work for most people with access, but maybe it's not working for other people.
And also, another great tool. So putting together, if you have a specific event, putting together a press release and submitting that to your local papers or television stations, because it may not run in the 5 o'clock news, but a lot of times it'll run on a morning show. They constantly need content to promote and to help build that storyline out for their day. And somebody said that most times they volunteered, they did so because of church, hearing about it at church. Yeah. Where you're already plugged in.
When you say to get out to the media on a regular basis and all that, I would say it goes back to what y'all have been saying in being consistent. because the media sometimes has already written the story and they just need to plug in a quote here or a quote there. So it's very important that what you say is what you want out there. Being
Yes.
consistent, like what y'all have been saying, being consistent is critical here.
Yeah, and I think Kira already touched on it as well, that we, and to sort of, piggyback it even on the volunteers, we have interns. I mean, everybody says they want to work on social media. Oh, I want to do social media. And I think that they think it's just playing around on social media, just looking at things and like what you would do personally. And it's really not. I mean, if to have a good social media campaign, like she said, you need to plan ahead. And you know that everyone is busy. And if you think, oh, I'll take care of that the day that I'm going to post it, it doesn't happen. Or you don't have the strategy behind, let me lay out what all the messages are that we need to be communicating all throughout the month. So really, not looking at it as like a fun playtime, but I mean, it's work, it's work just like any other piece of work or a communications plan. That you would need to lay out and be very intentional and specific and strategic with what you're doing.
Susan, did you have another question?
Yes, I do. It's interesting when I talk to my club about, becoming more forward in social media, because we don't have many members at our, we thought, well, how about an intern to come in and help with us, help that. And so what somebody was concerned about was with an intern, how much supervision you need, and is there a chance, they were worried that they would put out something and then it was too late to change it. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say have clear guidelines, and you will need to, if this is a person who they don't know what does your organization do, the values, that's where to start. Saying this is our mission, this is our vision, these are our values, and these are guidelines when you're posting. I've worked in government offices, and there are clear guidelines of things that you can't say, like never, ever, right? So these are things that you should never say, and these are things that are okay. And this is the type of content that we want to share. And that goes to what Kira was explaining about finding your voice and your message, right? We and All In Together are a civic engagement organization. So all our content, it's civic engagement, right? We're non-partisan, so we never ever support any political party, right? So just setting those guidelines in the right way, sharing with this intern what these guidelines are for. And it may be a good idea if someone is like kind of pre-approving. That's a great idea. Pre-approving everything before posting, because once it's posted, you don't know what's going to happen in there. So just pre-approve every post and just be sure that it's following the guidelines. And you as an organization, find what's your voice and your tone. This is maybe a little bit more complicated when people are engaging in posts and they are like answering and they start like tags and things. You have the option of like stopping that or blocking users. And also it's your social media. You can control what's happening in there. So that's from my part. I don't know if Kira wants to add.
The only thing I would add is if you, in the strategy and plotting some of that out, if you have an intern writing up that content and having them put it in a Google Doc or an Excel spreadsheet ahead of time so that you can just kind of quickly go through, and that's an easy way to kind of pre-approve that. And then they can schedule it through TweetDeck or another program, depending on the platform that you guys are trying to use. That takes any of the guesswork out, right? These things have already been cleared. We're good to say this, and you can tweak it if you need to, especially if it's scheduled out. If something changes, if I've scheduled this 2 weeks from now, I can go back in long ahead of time and make those corrections, and it's not a problem.
Okay, I have one more hurdle. When I explained that, of course, they would be supervising the intern, then there was some comment about, well, if I'm going to be supervising the intern, then it's not helpful. Because yes,
I understand, but it does take some of the legwork out of having to actually find the content, writing that copy. So I would say it's a big help in the long term. The tedious work of having to double check that, I totally understand, but it does take a big chunk of the heavy lift out of it.
there's always an investment in your volunteers, the time you need to put into them to make sure they're understanding what it is you need from them and making sure they understand that. Um,
Sure. And even if it were a staff member, you wouldn't necessarily bring them
Exactly.
on and day one, let
Say
them
go.
post on social media.
Yeah.
So, it may be that there's a sort of a learning curve. And once you get them trained, that they can have more freedom or a longer leash at least.
Yeah.
But they might not be ready on day one.
I kind of equated to a probationary period as an employee, until you can show me that you know exactly how to do this, prove it first, so it's once it's out there, it's you to explain it, not the intern.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, if there aren't any more questions, then we will wrap things up. I'm going to share, just shared in the chat. If you would just take 2 minutes, we would greatly appreciate if you'd be willing to just answer 2 short questions about the content for today. And then there's, of course, an opportunity for you to, just put general comments about anything about this session or something that you'd like to see us cover in the future. Thank you so much to Kira and to Guadalupe. We really appreciate our partnership with All In Together. We also want to thank Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina. They're a supporter of our Will Learn series, which is all of our educational training events. And thanks to them, we're able to offer these sessions at no charge. So again, thank you so much for being here. I'm also going to put the link in where the slide deck and the replay will be posted after this weekend. We'll get that video edited and get that up. So you can certainly download a PDF of the slideshow as well as watch the presentation again. Thank you all so much again for being here. Hope you all have a great rest of your week, and would love to see you at a training session again in the future.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Great.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Did you guys say something to me? No? Oh, okay.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's just us.
Hi. Oh, yeah. Did you stop the recording, Sarah?
I did now. Thank